What's up guys, Jay here and welcome back to our class building series. Everyone really loved the engineer building video, so I figured I wouldn't let too much time pass between this one and the next one. Trying to decide which one to do next was a tough choice, but I decided on the driller since several people were interested in him and he's an incredibly fun class to play, so I'll take any excuse I can to play him some more. He's also the class I feel I don't play enough of, so this was a great opportunity to learn some more in-depth stuff myself. Now I want to thank everybody for their feedback on the first video in this series as it helped me get a much better understanding of how I'm going to structure it going forward. So without further delay, let's take a deep dive into the intricacies and finer details regarding the kit of everyone's favorite spelunker, the driller, and also how you can be prepared to take on those high hazard missions on the road to legendary. By the way, if you want to see more gaming videos, subscribe to the channel, that way it's easier to find my content.
Congratulations, you've proved yourself an exceptional miner.
Before we get into the main bulk of the video, I just want to take a quick second to say thank you guys for being understanding that I had to skip last week's upload. I had a cold and I didn't want to subject you guys to hearing my nasally voice. I also want to thank every single one of you for your help getting this channel past 1,000 subscribers. I can't believe we got here in such a short time and I can't wait to see how fast we can make this community grow even more. I've only been on YouTube for a little under 3 months now and I can't believe so many people are interested in what I have to say, and it really means a lot to me. So thank you. I cannot thank you all enough for such an amazing welcome, and let's see how fast we can grow this community together. Now let's get back to talking about the driller.
Obstacle! More like a granite smoothie wants something!
So you want to become a better driller player in DeepRockGalactic. Well, like I said with the engineer, it's good to have a firm understanding of the base functions of how the class works. Lucky for you, I've already covered the basics of playing the driller in the Driller Beginner's Guide. Make sure to watch that video if you have not yet, because from this point on, I'm going to be talking as if you are already aware of the information given in that video and are aware of what the driller has access to. With that out of the way, today we are going to be expanding on those ideas and try to get the most out of what the driller has to offer. As I said before, the driller has a very unique role in the DRG roster. His arsenal, equipment, and style really allow him to be a kind of jack-of-all-trades role. He can pretty much aid any other member of the team in various ways. He can help the gunner take out swarms by shedding his armor and making them more vulnerable. He can help the engineer in crowd control with his wide-sweeping weapons. He can even help the scout get to those hard-to-reach mineral locations. Much of what makes the driller as useful and unique as he is his unmatched ability to control the environment and mold the terrain into the perfect shape the team needs for any given situation. Hacking pod dropped in an inconvenient spot? Don't worry, just carve out the walls, giving you more room to cover it. Liquid morkite veins in just the worst locations? Easy peasy, just cut a straight line to it from the refinery. The driller essentially makes it almost impossible to have a bad positional setup by being able to create the ideal setup no matter what. Now keep in mind I said almost impossible, because sometimes you just have to give in to what Hutchinson has in store for you. Still, if the driller can't salvage enough out of the terrain, he can make up for it with his vast array of equipment and weaponry that will help make short work of the glyphid swarms.
If it ain't drillable, it's probably flammable.
As I said before, the driller is very akin to a jack-of-all-trades role when it comes to the team's composition. He can be outfitted in a number of different ways since his playstyle allows him to be very flexible. So to help give an idea of where at least to start, let's go over how you can set up your driller so you can be as useful and effective for your team as possible. First, like the engineer, let's talk about the kinds of perks you may want to use. For the driller, there are a lot of different ways you can go about in terms of perk loadouts. Since the driller is so flexible, I'll try to give the most general useful ones for his playstyle. For passive perks, I would be reluctant not to mention Vampire, as it complements the driller very well since both his drills and his throwing axes count as melee damage, which in turn can heal you. Secondly, I would recommend Friendly, especially if you're still getting used to the driller's loadout, since his weapons all have very high spread and the last thing you want is to be responsible for any team deaths. Once you get past that phase, you can consider swapping this for something like Thorns for more survivability. The last choice is kind of up to you, but perks like Deep Pockets or Veteran Depositor wouldn't be bad options. For active perks, again, there are many ways you can kit yourself out. Iron Will is a good choice, especially if running Vampire for good synergy, as you can get yourself up and then just drill something to stay up. Other than that, See You in Hell or Dash are good options you could take as well. Again, you don't need to stick to these loadouts exactly, but they're a good starting point. Now that we got the beginning of the setup done, it's time to talk guns. The weapons are the main thing you're going to be using in your missions after all, so we need to make sure that they are up to the task. Now we're going to dive deep and talk about the full list of potential upgrades and loadouts that these weapons have and which one is most likely the best for you. Remember that I won't be going too deep into overclocks simply because I haven't gotten all of them yet, but I will mention certain overclocks that are very effective that I do have or that I have learned about through my research. With that in mind, if any of my assumptions about some of the overclocks that I don't have are not accurate, let me know down in the comments below, and I rightfully apologize up front if I got anything wrong. The flamethrower is the starting primary weapon the driller has, and it's perfect for those wanting to fulfill their pyrotechnical fantasies. It shoots fire and leaves behind sticky fire to make even more fire when you are shooting the fire. Did I mention it shoots fire? It's a very good option for dealing an insane amount of damage, and its upgrades give you more ways to improve your fire flinging abilities as well as other general use changes. In the first tier, you have a choice of either increased tank capacity or increased max range on your flames. You can do either or here, but personally I like more range so I can burn things more farther away. In tier 2, you have a choice of more overall damage, increased heat buildup, or increased sticky flame duration. Here I would go for either more heat damage or longer sticky flame duration. In tier 3, you have either increased flow rate, which basically means a higher rate of fire, a higher amount of slow applied by the sticky flames, or more overall ammo reserves. Here I would go for the better slow on sticky fuel because it adds a good amount of crowd control to this weapon. In the fourth tier, you can have either increased sticky flame duration, further increased overall ammo reserves, or the addition of a fear application to your flames. Here it's kind of up to you, but for me I would go for either more sticky flames or more overall ammo. Finally, in tier 5, we have either heat radiance, which causes the flamethrower to emit an aura of heat onto all enemies within 4 meters while firing. The heat can expedite the rate at which enemies at very close range are ignited by the flamethrower's direct flames or sticky flames. Alternatively, you could make it so that enemies have a 50% chance to explode if killed with direct damage. Here, it's really down to your choice, but personally, I just really like making things explode. In terms of strong overclocks, the one that probably has the strongest impact is the sticky fuel. It adds a second damage over time effect to your sticky flames and also increases its duration, causing your sticky flames to become twice as deadly. Just keep in mind for this overclock that your overall ammo size and tank's size are significantly reduced. The cryo cannon, as I said in the original driller video, is the literal polar opposite of the flamethrower, spewing a stream of cold slushy that can freeze enemies solid and soften them up for your team to deal with. It's great for weakening those dreadnoughts or elite enemies, and its upgrades give it many different ways to increase its effectiveness. In the first tier, you have the options of either better pressure drop rate, which basically means a bigger magazine, a faster charge up time, or increased freezing power. Here, I like to keep it simple and just get more freezing power. In tier 2, you can have either increased overall ammo reserves, increased range on the cold stream, or a faster recovery time if you completely empty the chamber. Here it's up to you, but I like to take the increased range for the cold stream. In tier 3, the choice is between faster pressure gain rate for a shorter time between fires, or increased flow rate for a faster rate of fire. This is really up to personal preference, but I like the faster flow rate to freeze things faster. In the fourth tier, your choice is between either more damage per cold particle, more freezing power per cold particle, or more overall ammo reserves. Here I like to take the increased freezing power, but honestly any choice here is good. Finally, in tier 5 you can choose either Fragile, which gives you a chance to deal extra damage to frozen enemies and potentially shatter them, or Cold Radiance, which surrounds you in a cold aura that will progressively damage and freeze any enemy that stays close to you while you shoot the cryo cannon. This is the upgrade I would go for personally, as the cold field can help with taking care of enemies that swarm you from multiple sides. For overclocks, the cryo cannon has some interesting options. Ice Spear and Snowball essentially function the same way from what I can gather, but to different effects. They allow you to dump all the fuel into the form of a solid projectile instead of a constant stream of cold. It's an interesting concept, and I can definitely see it giving this weapon more effective range and could allow you to deal a lot of instant damage. The Sludge Pump is definitely a very unique weapon in the driller's arsenal, shooting globs of sludge to cover a large area and make it hard for the bugs to get to you. You can shoot directly at the bugs for damage over time, or charge up the shots to make a big puddle of sludge the bugs need to crawl through, making it a great weapon for defense, especially when upgraded. In the first tier, you can have either increased magazine size, increased projectile velocity, or larger size of the sludge puddles. Here it's really up to you, but I like the increased velocity personally. In tier 2, you can choose between either increased charged shot splash damage, increased uncharged shot direct damage, or adding more fragments to a charged shot splatter count. Here it's up to you again, but I like the increased charge shot damage because I tend to use charge shots more than uncharged shots. In tier 3, you can either make your puddles last longer in both time and effect, or give you more overall ammo reserves. Here I like to take the bonus ammo because this thing doesn't have the most ammo reserves, and charging shots consumes multiple shots at a time, so every little bit helps. In tier 4, you can get either a reduced cost to the amount of ammo that charged shots consumes, or a decreased charge time. Here I take the more ammo efficiency on charge shots for the same reasons as before, since this weapon doesn't have a ton of ammo reserves. Finally, in tier 5, you have effects that either increase the effect of the slow applied by both the puddles and the damage over time, or increase the overall damage of the puddle and the corrosive damage over time effect. This is a hard choice to make, and it really comes down to if you're using the sludge pump more for crowd control or straight up damage output. Personally, I really just like having the increased damage for more effective bug elimination. For overclocks, the one that at least to me seems like it would be a lot of fun is the Sludge Blast. From what it says and from what I have read, it basically turns this thing into a sludge shotgun, which seems like it would be a lot of fun as well as a good way to spread the sludge around. If anyone has this overclock, let me know in the comments and tell me if it's really as fun as I think it sounds. For secondaries, our first option is the Subata 120 pistol. Now, before we go any further, I want to say that now I understand just how much I undersold the value of this thing in the original Driller video. It's a pistol. There's really not much to say about this one other than it's a pistol. Now I understand that simple does not necessarily mean bad. The Subata may not be flashy with many bells or whistles on it, but what it lacks in flair it more than makes up for with reliability and efficiency, with its elegance being further enhanced by its upgrades. In the first tier, you have either improved base spread, increased magazine size, or shorter reload time. Here I personally take the bigger magazine size since the reload time and base spread this weapon has is not too bad, at least in my opinion. In tier 2 you have either increased ammo reserves or increased damage. Here it's really up to you, but I'd take the more ammo myself. Tier 3 gives you the choice between either increased damage, better recoil and reduced spread, or increased ammo reserves. This time I take the increased damage because I don't think you need too much ammo for this thing to be effective, and its spread isn't too bad to justify upgrading it in my opinion. In tier 4 you have either increased weak point damage or just straight up increased overall damage. Here I go with the increased overall damage simply because I think it's less limiting than the damage increase for only weak points, but really you could go with either one. Finally, in the 5th tier you could choose between either adding extra damage to burning enemies while extending the burning duration, or simply adding corrosive damage to the gun. Here it depends a lot on what your primary weapon is. If you're running the flamethrower, the extra burning could be useful, and if you're running the sludge pump, the corrosive rounds may be better. Finally, for overclocks, the pistol has a few interesting options. First, chain hit seems like a fun option since it gives your shots a chance to bounce to other nearby enemies. Also, tranquilizer rounds can give the gun a good chance to stun enemies at the cost of a smaller magazine. The EPC is an interesting secondary with a lot of practicality. It can be used for eliminating bugs or even collecting minerals if you use the right upgrades for it. In the first tier you can have either increased normal shot damage, increased charge shot damage, and area damage, or a larger magazine size. Here the choice isn't too extreme, but I like to take the increased ammo. In tier 2 you get either reduced heat generation on charge shots or increased projectile velocity for normal shots. Here I like to take the reduced heat buildup because I like doing charge shots a lot, but really either one is fine. In the 3rd tier you can choose between either less ammo consumed when performing a charge shot, a faster charging speed, or an increased cooling rate. Again, since I like charging shots, I take the less ammo consumed for them, but you could also go for a faster charge speed if you want. In tier 4 you can have either a larger damage radius for the charge shots, further increased magazine size, or further increased charge shot damage and area damage. Here it's really up to you, but for me personally I like having more ammo here. Finally, in the last tier you have some very spicy choices. You could either choose Burning Nightmare, which causes charge shots to pass through all targets, dealing maximum direct damage when they are touched by it and piercing straight through them, passing cleanly through enemies and dissipating with no explosion when they hit a wall. Or you could go with Plasma Burn, which will cause every normal shot to apply heat to an enemy based on the amount of damage dealt to it. Finally, you could choose the Thin Containment Field upgrade. Now I already touched on this upgrade in my mining expedition guide, but it essentially allows you to shoot at a charge shot to cause it to burst, and using this you can actually mine minerals using the EPC. In terms of which one you want to use, it really depends on what you are going to do with this. If you want to mine with the EPC, then it's Thin Containment Field. If using it for damage, honestly either of the other two upgrades will do you perfectly fine. For overclocks, it's hard to say since there are so many ways you can go with this gun, so I would just play it safe and go with something like Magnetic Cooling Unit. The Wave Cooker is definitely the most unique weapon in the Driller's arsenal, and arguably in the entire game as well. It's a collection of microwave pieces slapped together and strapped onto your arm. It's capable of cooking enemies from the inside out and is actually quite good at hitting multiple targets at once. In the first tier you could choose either increased damage, increased magazine size, or an increased impact radius. Here it's down to personal preference, but I just like the increased raw damage. In tier 2 you can choose either reduced heat generation, increased rate of fire, or increased cooling rate with a shorter overheat duration. Here I stick with the reduced heat generation as it simply helps me stay shooting longer. In tier 3 you get either a slowing effect applied to the Wave Cooker or an effect that amplifies any heating or cooling effect applied to the target. Here it kinda depends on what build you are trying to make. If your goal is general ad control, then the slow is a good choice, but if you want to get more elemental focus, then the amplifier is a good pick. In the 4th tier you have some rather interesting choices. Wide angle lens lets you press the reload button to give the Wave Cooker an even wider spread at the cost of significantly increased heat buildup. while Power Supply Overdrive lets you also press the reload button to instead increase the rate of fire with again the cost of increased heat buildup, however not as much as the wide-angle lens. Again, here it really depends on your build and you kind of have to decide on whether you basically want a larger spread or more focused damage. The last tier gives you some pretty complex choices. Contagion Transmitter gives the weapon increased damage against enemies affected by toxin, corrosion, or sludge puddles, and there's a small chance to spread neurotoxin to nearby enemies. Boiler Ray makes it so that way enemies killed by the cooker have a chance to explode, dealing damage around them. Finally, Exothermic Reactor makes it so that every time you damage a burning or frozen enemy, there is a chance that you can deal heavy damage to them and spread damage of that same type to nearby enemies. Here it really depends on the build you are running, as these are all pretty crazy upgrades. Now I'm simple, so I just like blowing stuff up, so that's what I did, but feel free to experiment if you choose. For overclocks, there are a lot of good options to run, but the one that seems the most fun is probably Gamma Containment. It basically makes the wave cooker into an atomic reactor microwave, giving it a chance to inflict radiation at the cost of less damage, magazine size, and shot spread. So now that we've set up the weaponry for your driller, it's time to go over the rest of his kit and set up everything else we need to get the most out of him. In terms of which throwable ordnance you want to bring, the Impact Axe is very fun and very effective option, especially if you are running the Vampire perk, since again it'll be able to heal you. The HE Grenade or Frag Grenade is very standard and easy to use for new players if you've played literally any other FPS game in the past. Able to do good damage and in an effective area, just cook and throw. The Neurotoxin Grenade can help deal with troublesome elite enemies, and if you run the Flamethrower, can help you light up an entire room in flames. Lastly, the Spring Rippers are effective but dangerous. Make sure your teammates know you are bringing them and be extra careful when throwing them around. As I said in the original driller video, the power drills are probably his most important piece of equipment. They give him the ability to completely warp the terrain to whatever needs he or his team need, which basically translates to you never being in any kind of a bad position because you can simply turn the position into an advantageous one. You can use them to cut out a holding area for anything you might need, whether it be to defend a hacking pod in a sabotage mission or a fuel cell in a salvage mission. Also, while not incredibly recommended, you can use them as an emergency melee weapon if need be. When paired with the Vampire perk, it can actually be pretty useful. The drills also have access to an array of upgrades similar to the rest of the driller's kit to help improve them. Tier 1 lets you choose either more damage, faster drilling, or increased fuel capacity. Here I like to take the faster mining. In Tier 2 you can choose either a faster cooling rate or a shorter overheat duration. Here either is a good choice, but I like the faster cooling rate. If you just remember to keep an eye on your temperature gauge while drilling and stop right before 100%, you'll cool down quickly and be able to start again almost instantly. Tier 3 only gives you one choice of faster mining and movement speed, so hey, that's an easy choice. Finally, Tier 4 lets you choose either increased fuel or making your drills cool down when killing an enemy. Here it's up to you whether you're going for the damage route or the pure mining route. For me, I just keep it simple and take more fuel. The Satchel Charge is the driller's utility tool, and I use that term loosely because while yes it does have a lot of useful applications, its primary function is to blow a massive hole in whatever terrain you place it on. Now this can be good for clearing minerals and obstacles, don't get me wrong, but it's significantly more fun to throw it onto a huge group of enemies or a single big enemy and just watch the atomic level explosion that ensues. In any event, you can upgrade the Satchel Charge in many ways, like increasing the blast radius or mining radius to help with collecting resources. Personally, I would recommend taking every upgrade that increases the number of charges you can carry, since, at least in my book, more explosives equals more fun.
Fueled up and raring to go.
So now that you know the real ins and outs of the driller and his kit, it's time to put it all together. Now you can be the best terrain chopping, flame spewing, stoutly dwarf you can be. Whether it be a complete incineration build where you set the entire map on fire, or a corrosive toxic thrower that infects everything around you with corrosion and infection, make sure that you experiment with everything that the driller has access to so you can find the perfect build that fits you. Don't forget that your drills are by far your most valuable asset to the team, even if you don't use them for damage. As a jack of all trades, it's your responsibility to make sure that everyone on the team is taken care of in whatever role they have. And don't forget that the most important thing to keep in mind when playing the driller is whether or not you are having fun. Well, that was a beefy video, but hopefully now you have a much better understanding of the kind of setup the driller has and how to equip yourself so that you're ready for whatever the high difficulties have to throw at you. So what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? I hope this answered a lot of the questions people had, and I would love to hear your feedback. If I did miss anything, or if you want me to go even deeper into detail and do specific builds, let me know down below. I'm always open to hearing new ideas. And again, thank you guys all so much for getting past 1,000 subscribers. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. Please be sure to give it a like because it tells me which types of videos you guys want to see. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next Friday for another video.